I like your stockings in the back there, Jess. So let's get started. I am going to say a quick prayer for us, and then we're going to dive in. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for this time. I thank you for this day. I thank you that Tuesdays are now a time that we can gather and learn more about your word and what you have given us as our armor, Lord. I just pray for that you would bless it and that you would calm June so that we can continue doing Bible study. And I just lift all this up to you. I thank you for this time. Amen. Okay, so this week was the Shield of Faith. Hi, Sudie.
Hi, sweetheart.
All right, so okay, so in James, the book of James is like one of my favorite books in the Bible. In James 2:20, it is a verse that tells us that faith without works is useless. It actually says, "You foolish person, do you want evidence that faith without deeds is useless?" The word that is translated into faith in this verse is the Greek word pistis, which is the same word in Ephesians 6:16, which is the passage that we've been looking at this week. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. This particular word is used over 200 times in the New Testament, and the vast majority of the time it's related to action of the person. So taking up the shield of faith, and faith having something to do with an action that is coming out of what you believe. So the first three pieces of armor that Paul spoke about were the belt of truth, which was the first week, the breastplate of righteousness, and then the shoes of peace, which we went over last week. And they were all part of the daily uniform that we are supposed to put on. But then we start to see a change now, starting this week, that we are going to see pieces of armor that have action that are attached to them and something to do with a piece of armor. So faith is not what you say you believe. Faith is what you say you believe in action. Faith is when you act like God is telling the truth. That is what Priscilla said in her video, and I'm going to put that in the chat for you guys. I thought that was so good. Faith is not what you say you believe. Faith is what you say you believe in action. Faith is when you act like God is telling the truth. Yes, Katie, I love that too. So she gave an analogy. She said that when we go into a living room and we sit in the chair that we sit in every day, or the couch or whatever, we have faith that that chair is going to hold us. So we could look at that chair and say all day long, I believe that you are a chair and I believe that you are going to support me. But until we actually sit down in the chair, it doesn't show that we have faith in the chair. And she said the same thing applies when we have like a friendship with somebody. We can say that we're friends with somebody. We can say that, you know, so-and-so is my best friend in the whole world. But unless you are willing to engage in being vulnerable and stepping into that space and giving of your time, giving of your energy, your emotions, you will never actually see the results or the blessings of that friendship. It will stay at a very shallow level, and you'll never actually be able to enjoy the blessings from it. And that's what she was saying about faith as well. She said, when you say you have faith and you act accordingly, it says less about you and more about what you really believe to be true about God. And one of the quotes that I really liked from her video this week, she said, we sell ourselves short when we won't trust God enough to believe that what he has called us to, he will equip us for. And I think that is something that I think a lot of Christians have a hard time with, is they think maybe, you know, if they pray a prayer like, Lord, use me, or, you know, Lord, allow me to lead someone to Christ, or, you know, whatever you're praying for in your life. If you're worried that the Lord's going to ask you to do something that you're not comfortable with, then that's basically not having faith in saying, you know, that the Lord does care about you, that he has, you know, that he loves you, that what he calls you to is in accordance to his will, and that he will take care of it. So all of those things, when we let worries get in the way and we worry that, you know, he's not going to handle the situation well, then that is selling ourselves short, because we truly aren't trusting. Our faith isn't being put into action or strengthened. He wants you so busy, he being the devil, he wants you so busy putting out internal fires that you don't have time to think about or advance against him. And when you are weakened dealing with all those fires, then the enemy is actually advancing against your life. And you know when he's advancing, because you start to become intimidated and self-conscious and full of fear. And we know that is not of the Lord. In 2 Timothy, it tells us that he has not given us a spirit of fear. So when we are, you know, trying to put out all these internal fires, which are those insecurities, the questions about like, well, Lord, I'm not really sure if I, you know, am qualified enough to do this, or I'm not sure if, you know, so and so is close enough to me that I could witness to her. I'm not sure if she's actually going to respond well and not judge me, or have like a negative opinion about that. All of these what if situations, especially just this year alone, all the like what if worst case scenarios that have literally made all the decisions for us regarding, you know, everything that's happened in our world. Those things, they hold us back, and they basically make us not be able to do the things that we are called to do, because we're so focused on our own fears and our own insecurities, that we forget about the bigger picture, the bigger things that the Lord has for us, or what he's called us to do. She said, fear is what keeps us laying in bed going through all the what ifs. The enemy tries to light the what if fires. He tries to intimidate you and cause fear to the point where we don't feel like we can step out in faith. So one of the things I want to ask you guys this week, especially as we've been going through this Shield of Faith week, do you feel like the Lord has been calling you to something? How has he been calling you to act? Or what type of conviction has he brought to your attention through this study? Is it maybe going to somebody and making amends, or asking someone for forgiveness? When you had a conversation with someone and it got heated and you got angry and said things that you didn't mean. I, you know, recently had a conversation where I had to apologize, and realize that that's not what we're called to. We're called to live in unity within Christ. And maybe it's the Lord calling you to bring someone a meal, or to join a ministry that, you know, you've been nervous about doing. Is it going to put you in a situation where you're uncomfortable? Joining a worship team, joining a women's ministry, joining a meal train, or volunteering at a food bank. Just don't let the enemy cheat you out of what God is calling you to do. And then that cheats you out of the blessing that he also has for you. Which I feel like you and I have had this conversation before. Like I just had deja vu actually saying that out loud, that when we don't actually step into the things that he's calling us to, you know, his will is going to be done. So if we don't step into that, he could very easily use someone else that he's called, that's actually listening and willing to step into that. But then we miss out on the blessing. Like we miss out on being aware of his presence and his leading and his guiding, and our faith getting stronger in that. I know.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
There was, I think, I can't remember if I shared this with you. I think I shared it with Liz too, but there was, for anyone who follows Elevation Church and Pastor Stephen Furtick, this Sunday's message was on missing out on God's favor because we choose what's familiar. And he was praying for a word for the year of 2020. And he was like, what word makes sense for 2020? The year of fear. He's like, my brain would say the year of frustration. And he really felt like the Lord was like, no, this is the year of my favor. And he's like, that makes no sense, God. Like, this is 2020. And, but going back to what you were saying, it was such a powerful perspective shift that we will miss out on God's favor if we continue to choose what's comfortable and what's familiar. And his favor a lot of times will be uncomfortable. It will be change. It will be different. And how many times do we resist God's favor because it feels different? So, yeah.
Oh, thank you. Exactly. I need to look up that sermon because I want to watch it. She said, well, this is like a super easy thing to remember. She said, once you act out in faith, the shield goes up. So it's actually the acting out in faith is what puts the shield up that's going to block. And I can tell you in my own life this year, just this walk of faith and the journey that the Lord has taken me on, there was something that I underlined this week where she was talking about the feeling of not being equipped well enough or feeling insignificant or not feeling like you have it all together in order to lead someone else in the right way. And I've been telling people recently like that have recently dedicated their life to the Lord or realize that, their faith is growing and they want to share it with other people, but they get caught in the fear of not knowing all the answers or not knowing how to answer the hard questions. And so they don't actually step into that role of sharing their faith because of the what ifs again. And I've just realized like our stories are so powerful and how the Lord has changed us that we don't actually need to know all the answers. I mean, it's good to know a lot of the answers, but I don't think anyone has ever been led to the Lord by looking at all of the archaeological evidence of the Bible or looking at, all of the arguments for Christ. A lot of times the Lord speaks to our hearts through stories and through a recognition of this is how I've been changed by the power of the Holy Spirit and Jesus in my life. And I want to share this with you because it's a miracle. Like it has changed my life and our stories are so powerful. And so stepping into that. But then again, like, do I believe that for myself? Am I willing to say the same thing for myself? Like when the Lord called me to start a women's Bible study, the first thing I said to him was like, Lord, I'm not qualified to start a women's Bible study. I don't know all the answers. I don't know all the things. And he was just like, that's okay. Like I can still use you. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to know all the answers. You can bring women together that want to know more about the Lord and they're going to teach you things. And I was just like, well, that's cool because I definitely don't know everything. So I need to learn things. I need to step into this. And honestly, this Bible study has brought me closer to the Lord. Whether it has anyone else here, I've been in the Bible more than I have all year because of this, so even if it was only for me, like to leave me in this to grow closer to him, then I think it's worth it because that's the blessing. Like I'm receiving that blessing from this because of stepping into it. And then also now growing closer to everyone here in this Bible study and hearing the stories of like how the Lord is using it to encourage other women to grow their strength, to allow them to witness to other people. That is just like so beautiful and strengthening my faith too. So it's such a blessing to step into that. But I mean, again, there's a lot of times where I haven't chosen to step into it. And I've just been thinking about that a lot this week. Like how much have I missed out on because I was scared, because I was too fearful to say, okay, Lord, I trust you. Yeah, I've just been thinking about that a ton this week. She talks about Luke 5 in the video. And this is where, if any of you have seen The Chosen, has anyone here seen The Chosen? Liz, you have? Jess, you haven't watched it? Oh, you need to watch it. It's so good. Katie, you've seen it. Lauren, you too? Yeah. Oh, it's so good. Anyway, one of the first episodes is about Simon and where he's in the boat and he's been fishing all night long, hasn't caught a thing. And then Jesus is on the shore and he's ministering to people on the shore, and he actually gets in the boat with Simon. I know, Liz, I'm dying for season 2 too. I'm so excited. So he gets in the boat and he's teaching all the people on shore. And then after the sermon, he asks Simon to do something that it doesn't actually seem that unusual to us, but apparently, and I learned this from the video last night, scholars say that it was about noon when Jesus asked Simon to take the boat out to deep waters and throw the net into the water. And Simon knew that normally they fished at night, not during the day. And they also fished in shallow waters, not deep water. So what Jesus was asking Simon to do seemed irrational. It went against Simon's experience as a fisherman. And Simon had to make a decision, as we all do when we're being called to step out in faith. And in that story, Simon does step out in faith. And she was saying that the Lord oftentimes will let us hear the message, will let us hear the sermon, and then that's when he calls us out and says, okay, are you willing to step out in faith? You just saw me teach on this, like, will you follow through? And Simon did, even though it seemed irrational, and then the miracle happened. And she said that a lot of times, like in her own life, she tries to rationalize out of obedience. So she thinks she's being called to something. She'll think about it a little bit too long. She'll try to connect the dots and figure it all out and make sure that it sounds like something that she should do. But she said faith is when the dots don't actually connect and you say still, okay, Lord, let's go. And she said, I loved this in the video. She said, Jesus chose to do this miracle a certain way. He could have said, fish, get in the boat. And all of the fish could have gotten into the boat. But he didn't do it that way. He actually made Simon's faith work. And in that, he allows us to be partners with him in the experience of the miracles that he wants to do in our lives. And so that is faith in action. That is when he's calling us to do something, actually taking that step, not knowing how it's going to turn out, trusting, putting our faith in a God that is who he says he is, that he will follow through, that he does listen to our prayers, and then acting out in faith. And recently, I think this is a conversation you and I were having, Jess. I was telling her about some experiences that I have had while I've been praying, feeling led to say specific things to people or pray over people in a very specific way that initially makes me uncomfortable. Like while I'm praying, I get a response of like my heart rate rising, and I start like sweating because I get nervous. I was supposed to tell a barista in the Starbucks drive-through line a very specific message, and it was like, when I heard it, I was like, Lord, are you sure? I was like, I don't know this person. I don't know who this is, and I saw us going through a drive-through line that was 30 minutes away from our house. And I was like, okay. And so then anyway, that day, Mason, my husband, started driving, and I was on the phone with someone, so I didn't even know which direction we were going. When I got off the phone, we were halfway to that Starbucks that I saw while I was praying. And I was like, okay, I guess we're doing this. And so I got to go through the drive-through line, and I got to tell this woman that was apparently having a really hard day. She told me afterward that she was made in the image of God by a loving God, that she was there for a specific purpose, and that Jesus was calling her. Like that was what I heard when I was praying for her. And I was just like, I don't know who this person is, but it's a message I'm supposed to give her, so I'm going to give her. And she just looked at me like stunned, and she was like, okay, well, thank you. I have had a really hard day. And I was just like, all right, well, peace out, sister. Thanks for the coffee. It was like so unusual, but I just felt like the Lord was leading me in that. And so that has happened a couple times where like I've seen something while I've been praying, and it was really like, okay, this can happen if you choose to step into this, or it could not happen. But if you're willing to trust me, I think this should happen. And when it does, like, it's awesome. And it strengthens my faith. But also I have that question in my mind, is this from the Lord? Is this my mind wandering? And most of the time it's so specific that I don't think it's just my mind wandering, because I wouldn't come up with that. But if it is, I was just like, I was questioning all of this. And I think it was you, Jess, that told me, you were like, well, would the devil want you to tell someone that Jesus is calling them, that Jesus made them in their image, and that they have worth? And, yeah, I was like, yeah, exactly what my mother-in-law said. Like, I was like, that is so true. I mean, either like our words bring us closer to the Lord, or they pull us away from him, right? They have the power of life and death. And so all of those things that the Lord gave me to tell her are scripture based. Like all of that we are made in his image, that we have a purpose on earth, and that Jesus is calling each and every one of us. That is true. And I don't know if specifically what was going in her life, that she had to hear that. But one of the things that Priscilla said in her video, she was like, I want to be very clear that stepping out in faith is not stepping out in foolishness. So if we are feeling like we are being called in a certain direction, we need to first of all pray about it and then look at it through the eyes of scripture. So to look at it and see, does the Bible actually support this feeling of what I'm supposed to be called to, or what I'm supposed to be saying to this person, what I'm supposed to be leading this person in? Because if it isn't, then it's not of the Lord. And that is a really good lens to look through things. So Jess, thank you for that reminder, because I've been thinking about that a lot. And so with that is just what I wanted to lead into this week's discussion about faith and what we all learned together. So the first question is, how is the truth of our faith reflected in our actions and our attitudes? So how is the truth of our faith reflected in our actions and our attitudes?
I was thinking about this a little bit, Liz, after our talk yesterday about like all the things of the world too. I was thinking as I was catching up on Bible study that, especially when she has us, I think it was in day 2, circle the things that are preventing you from moving forward, and that the green box of like anxiety, worry about the what ifs, like insecurity, fear, doubt, as we start to talk about, hold on buddy, as we start to, as it's just like so tangible right now, this decision that we have to stay there. And like there's so many what ifs of like fear based, of like what if the election goes one way, what if the vaccine, what if the virus, what if the shutdowns, what if the economy, what if that we're living. And that question, what do our actions say about our faith and our beliefs? And I think that right now, every single second, I have to choose to take up my shield. And it's a choice. Like, it is a hard choice, because there's something that's weird. I don't know if the gratifying is the right word, but it almost like, it's so easy to slip into our flesh, and so easy right now to slip into the what ifs, and so easy to slip into the fear. But if we do that, we're always going to be distracted from God's favor and he calls us, do not be anxious about tomorrow. Do you trust me? Do you believe in my promises? Do you believe that I win? Do you believe that I sit on the throne? If you believe those things, then the faith part is taking action, and I will not stay in the what ifs. I will not be anxious. I will not be afraid, because I know that you win at the end of the day. So I'm going to take up that shield of faith, even though it's heavy, even though it's hard, even though I have to consciously choose to do it every day. For me, that's been the biggest example right now that I feel like we're all probably living through, but I know I feel with everything is, really, do I believe what I say I believe? And if so, I have to take that action and put down the fears and say, no, God, you win. I will not be anxious about tomorrow. I will not live in the what ifs. I will not let that distract me from who you are and your victory, that at the end of the day, we all know, are we living that way in our day to day? That was really big for me this week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think most of us can agree with that. So what has been the greatest challenge to your faith, or when have you seemed to be the strongest in your faith? I think honestly, like the moments when you feel leading from the Lord and you know like this is not probably of myself, like this is something that, you know, I feel called to do, but it makes you nervous. It makes you realize that you're going to get out of your comfort zone. I think those are the moments that stretch. I know for me, they stretch me the most. They make me realize that, you know, I don't have, you know, control over everything, but if the Lord's calling me to something, exactly what she said, that, you know, I have to believe that he is also going to equip me for what he has called me to do, and that I can trust him in that.
Yeah, I think for me, the moments that I feel strongest in my faith is when I actually like take that step and 100% see God in it. And I'm like, okay, this was like, this was really like from you, like it really hits home. And a lot of what you've been saying resonates with me because it was about 2 weeks ago. Like I missed last week's study, but I was still keeping up with it. But where we last left off, I was talking about how I really had been feeling like a conviction from God, and that I was like struggling with like whether this is like really where he like wanted me to go. And I was feeling a conviction to apologize to my husband for my past actions. And just being fully transparent, I did a lot of things that betrayed his trust, and a lot of them were up front and he saw them like in person, and then there was some things where like he like never knew that I betrayed his trust. And so I felt like the Lord was calling me to like bring that like darkness to light, and I felt like the enemy was like throwing this in my face, like this is your past, like look at how terrible you are, like and so it took me at least like 2 or 3 days of like trying to like work up that courage and like push down that fear to actually go up to my husband and apologize. And I started to apologize, and in the middle of my sentence, before I like got it all out, my husband just turns to me, he's like, I do not care about your past. um, and it literally brought me to tears because he said, I don't care about your past. He's like, I only care about our future and us moving forward, and I love you. And in that moment, I saw God and how he views me. Um, so anyways, it just it really shows that when you step out on that faith, like you hear God.
Wow, that is so powerful and such a beautiful story, Jessica. Thank you for sharing that. It's so beautiful in that you were able to see immediately the parallels between your husband saying that and how big the love of God is, that he forgives our past and doesn't even care about it. Like, not even a worry, that he only cares about your future, about how you're choosing to live now moving forward. That is so awesome. And how beautiful that you were able to like follow that leading, and then that was the blessing that came. Like, I'm sure you expected it to be so different than that, and then to realize that the Lord was showing you that, that is awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I 100% like expected it to just like spiral into like all of a sudden our relationship is like ruined, and you know, like we were in a good place, and you know, the enemy kept on telling me like, no, this is going to be terrible, this is this is going to be, you know, but a whole different reality for you, like because of everything that you've done. But I really felt like I had to let that all out, and basically like God is just like, nope, like you don't need to like disclose all of the dirty, all of the like, it's already, you're a new creation, you don't need to disclose every little tiny thing of your past. It's done, it's gone, that's not who you are anymore. And it was just amazing to see.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Jess. One of the things that came to mind when you were sharing that is this week when she was talking about the shields, how they're manufactured, like how they were put together and how they worked together. She was talking about how the flaming arrows of the devil, when I think about that, like I think of that as being damaging to me or trying to harm me or kill me. That's all what I always thought. And she was saying that those arrows in the past weren't actually meant to cause the devastating damage of, killing all the soldiers. It was actually to start a fire, to start a distraction. So if a wagon or a house or a barn is on fire, then everyone's going to put out the fire and save everything in that structure, so that, and then they're disabled. They're not banded together. They're not focusing on the battle. And so she said the way that the shields are actually put together is they would put them in water, and then when these javelins or these arrows that were on fire would hit the shield, it would lodge in, but it would actually take the fire out. Like it would extinguish the fire and make it completely useless. And it wasn't that it just deflected it to protect the person, but it actually put the fire out. And it's she was saying that when we bring up that shield, then it's in the middle of everything. It's like in the middle of that step of faith that we're taking, that shield comes up and it completely extinguishes it. So it's no longer even something that you are thinking about or holding you back from. So like in the moment where I'm following through on what the Lord has called me to, I'm no longer thinking about all the insecurities that kept me up the night before, all the what if scenarios, because he's in the midst, that my shield is up. And Jess, I feel like that's exactly what you were saying. You went to go follow through, and right in the middle of it, like it was like the Lord intervened through your husband and gave you the message that he wanted you to hear. And you didn't even have to go the lengths that you thought you were going to go. And you didn't have to go through all the hardship that you thought you were going to have to discuss with your husband. He met you in the middle, like your shield was up. That's like so cool.
Thank you, Gianna. Yeah, it was really cool to see God work in that way.
Okay, so the last question, discuss the turtle formation on page 134. What does this say about how we should concern ourselves with building up the faith of others, and how should active faith strengthen the broader community of Christ? So this I thought was super cool. If you have your books, turn to 134. I'm just going to read a little section here. So this is actually kind of what I was talking about, but they would dip their shields in water and then huddled together in a group, hoisting the shields overhead. Strategically placed hooks on the sides would allow them to be linked together. When formed into a unit like this, their water-soaked shields would create a damp, dense shell of protection above them, called the turtle formation. And because the shields actually had a gap between the layers, flaming arrows could penetrate far enough into the shield to be quickly extinguished. That's right, the shield not only deflected the arrows, it also extinguished them. So he was talking about how we as Christians could easily take up our one shield, and she said it covers 2/3 of your body. So you could crouch down individually and put the shield over you, and it would protect you from one side. But if you had linked up arms with everyone around you, and you guys, we put our shields together, then it covers us. It covers much more of us and is much more effective. So then in regards to the question, what does this say about how we should concern ourselves with building up the faith of others, and how should active faith strengthen the broader community of Christ? What do you guys think?
I'll share one example, and I put it in the comments, but Dee, hearing your stories of like how you ministered to your floor guy, and how you, when you're taking June to a children's hospital and had to spend the 2-hour ride separated from her, talking to the grumpy ambulance driver, and you started talking to them about Jesus, and how like the barista, your example of faith has encouraged and inspired me to be more aware of like how is God asking me to show up and take these actions of faith in my own life? And it's just, I mean, I think it's so powerful to see like this group and to see your friends taking actions of faith, because it inspires you to do that in your own life, because you see that example and you see if they can do it, then I can do it. And it kind of like it almost makes you look in the mirror like, wow, that I admire that so much about that person. Am I doing my part? And I don't know, for me, that's how I feel that being very real within this group and like within our friendship. And I think it's cool to see that our life can have that impact on other people too. Like our out of state move, this was a huge step of faith for us. Like we literally quit our jobs. Well, my husband quit his job and we sold our house before we ever saw the place where we were, like the state where we were moving. We just knew God called us to move there. And like that step of faith for us we've gotten so many messages from people saying we've been feel like we need to do this too, but we didn't have the courage. But because you guys did it, we feel like we have the courage now. So we just put our house on the market.
Wow.
You know, like different areas like that in our life. For me, that's been a very tangible thing lately.
Well, I think too, like just piggybacking off of what you said with the Bible study, if you hear other people talking about what they're doing, it helps you get out of that comfort zone to take those steps out in faith, as well as you feel like you're part of a team. You're not isolating yourself. Like he does not want us to be isolated Christians. He wants us to be in groups. He wants us to be stronger because we build one another up and protect one another and encourage one another.
I feel like everything in this week is really just confirming things that have just taken place. Last week, unexpectedly, I was asked to speak on our network does a Bible study. And I was asked the night before. So I went out, I did my walk. I talked to God, like, Lord, just prepare my heart for whatever you want me to share with these women today. I know what you've been doing in my life, but I don't know if that's going to serve them. And the call was, she told me 12 Pacific Standard Time, 2 Eastern, and I didn't even do the math. And so she messaged me at like 10:59 and was like, all right, I'm going to jump on. Sorry, I'm running a little late. And I was like, wait, I have an hour, right? Like, I'm not prepared. And I actually talked about this very thing without even knowing like about the turtle formation at that point, and how like, just like you were just saying, like we weren't called to do life alone. And that I think all throughout 2020, if I didn't know the Lord and I didn't seek out the Lord 4 years ago, how differently this year would have played out for me, and how I've been able to use this platform to minister to other people and bring them together. And I don't know if I shared this with you guys in the beginning, but I actually did this study, not this study, but the study of Ephesians in a life group virtually at the beginning of quarantine. And I actually fell away from it because it got really heavy and hard. And I think that's like what Ephesians is it's like, we have to be prepared. We have to have that armor on. And for some reason, the Lord keeps preparing this for me. And so I was sharing with them that this study came out of nowhere, because I didn't know Dina, right? Like I didn't know that I was going to be able to have this Tuesday morning. But when we are surrounded by other believers, even when we feel like the enemy's coming in, other people are interceding, they're praying against it, even when we don't know, right? Just preparing for this call, you're praying for our situations, you're asking for those things. And so if we can get ourselves around other people of faith, sometimes when we can't be strong enough on our own, like the Lord's already planted people in situations in our life to help us grow through those seasons. So it's just kind of cool to see how God like puts you in these situations where I was really nervous, right? And I don't like to corporately pray. I think it's just, I shouldn't say I don't like to. I'm still uncomfortable doing it. I'm still very uncomfortable doing it, but I do it, right? And Jess, the facilitator on that call, was like, she normally has somebody else facilitating with her, and she wasn't on the call, and she's like, will you pray us out? And I was so uncomfortable, but literally it wasn't my prayers. Like, it was the Lord speaking through me of what he needed them to hear. And it's cool to see how God incorporates every single thing that he plants in our lives when you're open to receiving it, to remind you that you are like standing in your truth, you are in your calling, you are doing the things of those leap of faith and trusting that his hand is in it, because even when we don't understand it, like, it's always working out the way he's designed it. So I don't know if any of that made sense, but like, I'm having all these aha moments popping up, like, yes, Lord, okay, yes, confirmation, yep, got that. So yeah.
Thanks, Melissa. That was awesome. I think maybe more than just me, I saw everyone kind of nodding their heads that we were like, I totally been there. I know that feeling. And exactly like what you said, like the Lord was praying through you. That's all this is. Like, it's like taking that step and saying, okay, like, I recognize that I'm being called to this. I'll say yes. And then him being like, boom, okay, you stepped out in faith. Here's the miracle. Here's where I meet you in the middle. Here's where, like, you're a partner in this with me. That's so cool. Did anyone else want to share something before I start taking prayer requests?
Really quick, I just want to thank all of you guys for praying this week. Like, I was so sick all of last week. There were just like 100 million things, mastitis and all those things. But anyway, so I did not even get one page of this done. But like, I shared a little bit about my husband last week, and he's just doing so great. Like, he finally, I don't know, something has just clicked with him. And so he was saying last night, like, I know things aren't always going to be like so great, like, we're not always on the mountaintop, right? But he was like, I am right now, and I'm taking advantage of it. And so, like, things are going really, really well. And I just want to thank you guys so much for praying. Like, the other thing is, I'm Catholic, but I was talking to a priest this weekend a little bit, and he was just saying, like, he was talking about faith. He was like, you're not meant to fix all the problems. Like, you're meant to lay it at the Lord's feet. And he was like, that you are just like the person right now, you're the person in between your husband and Christ. You stand there, you pray for him, and then you leave it all at his feet. And I was like, oh, right. I'm a doer. I always want like something, I want a plan, and that's how things are going to get better. But he was like, just leave it. Like, he can take care of it. So that was kind of my, as I looked at this yesterday a little bit, and as I'm listening to you guys today, that was kind of my journey of faith this week, is just lay it at his feet and he can take care of it. And like, total trust and surrender, I think, is just what he's calling me to right now. So yeah.
As a doer, that's like the hardest thing ever.
So hard. There's this one prayer that you say it 10 times, and you do this for 9 days in a row. Okay, so for 10 times in a row, you just say, Jesus, I surrender everything to you. Take care of everything. And you keep repeating it. And like, every time when you repeat something 10 times in a row, every time you're like, oh my gosh, maybe I can do this. Or like, every time you say it, it's just, I've been saying that a lot recently. Take care of everything. So, yeah.
Thank you, Katie. That's such a good reminder. Okay, I wanted to share with you something that happened this week, and then I'll take some prayer requests. So With what I've been hearing in my prayer time, I was kind of getting a little bit nervous because every time I would sit down and really like engage in prayer with the Lord, I was getting to the point where I was like, oh my gosh, like, is he going to ask me to do something that I really don't want to do? Because up until now, it's like talking to a barista at Starbucks that I don't know, praying over a friend that, I think that that's going to be okay that I pray over her. But, like there's certain things that I'm sure that he's going to ask me to do that I'm not going to want to do because of just my own insecurities or whatever. And so I was really getting like a little bit nervous sitting down to pray. And even though he was like, I've been asking him for this for months. I've been asking him, Lord, like, speak to me, show me who I'm supposed to talk to. If I'm supposed to be talking to someone, like, lead me, like, make it very evident and clear what your plan for me is during the day so that I don't miss it. And so he actually is answering that prayer, and I'm seeing these things, and then I get nervous and scared, So I was sitting down praying after this week, thinking about how, our faith is based on what the truth is. So like what we believe is true about God, and how big we think God is or how small we think he is. And if I believe that my God is really big, in full control, loves me so much that he would give his son's life for me, do I believe that he's going to follow through on a simple thing that makes me nervous? Yes. So in my mind, I can say that. But in my heart and in my actions, am I willing to follow through? And that's what it really comes down to. So I was sitting there praying, and I felt this overwhelming feeling to go get a pen. And it was really weird. Like, this never happened to me before. I was just sitting there and I was trying to pray, and I just, my eyes were closed and I was focused, and I just heard, go get a pen, go get a pen, go get a pen, go get a pen. And I literally couldn't pray anymore because all I heard in my head was go get a pen. And I was like, all right, fine, Lord, I'll go get a pen. So I stood up and I got a pen and I came back down and sat down. And in my prayer journal, it's December. I have a month for this prayer journal that I have. And the only page that had open space on it was the very last page of my prayer journal. And it was blank. And I just sat there and I was holding my pen and I was like, all right. And what I heard was very clear. It was, my child, I have so much more for you than you could ever know or see. Do you trust me? That was it. And I wrote it down and I looked at it and I was like, that is the question. Like, do I trust the Lord? And it was the very last page of my journal, like looking over this last year of choosing this is the first year I've ever had a prayer journal. And, there's a space to write all your prayers down. And then there's a space to write answered prayers, to see everything that the Lord has answered in my life every single month. And for it to be the very last page of like this whole journey that he's taken me on in my prayers with him, for him to ask me, like, do you really trust me? And I was telling Mason this week, because I was like, babe, like, he's calling me out. Like, the Lord's calling me out and asking, are you willing to follow through? And I honestly, I'm like, every single time I sit down in prayer, I am asking the Lord to strengthen me and help me in my unbelief. Like, just because I say I trust him, like, I'm still going to struggle. Like, I'm going to struggle through every one of those things that he asked me to do. And I'm going to feel insecure and I'm going to feel scared. And so in that, knowing that that's going to happen, like asking the Lord, strengthen me, like, give me your will, give me your strength, give me your confidence to follow through on the things that you've asked me to do, that my will be less than yours, that I'll actually be able to follow through. So that's just been something that's been on my heart this week. So I just encourage you guys that in your prayers, like, be specific, like, ask the Lord to show you what he wants you to do, what you're called to do this week, because he will. And it may not be something, that you're super excited about, but if you follow through, the blessing is amazing. It's humongous. Yes, Jess, be bold. Like, now is the time. People need Jesus in their life so much. So, with that, for the last few minutes, I just want to take some prayer requests if anybody has any, and then I'll pray us out.
I'll share some praises because I've shared some prayer requests the last couple weeks.
Yes.
My whole house got COVID, and thankfully I was the last of us. But everyone is totally fine. I'm just waiting for my smell and taste to come back. It's a very bizarre feeling. But so thankful. My grandparents were here when everyone got it, and they did not get sick. And they're the ones that I was worried about, and they did not get sick. So very thankful for that, especially because they had to fly back to California, and they're both doing well. I was asking prayers, and one of the things I wrote down in my bubble at the beginning of this Bible study was kind of this transition phase that our family is at, and where my husband and I were at in his decision for his job. And he's sitting right here trying to talk quiet. Just kidding. But he decided not to go back into corrections and prison life, which I'm so thankful for. And now comes the faith producing part, where it's like we're not sure what the next step looks like. And it was really that decision of choosing God's favor that's unknown. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like, or choosing what's familiar and what's comfortable, which would have been, the job that he worked for the last 7 years. So praise and clarity for that, and that he's not going back to prison. Hallelujah. But just continued prayers and guidance on exactly what the Lord has for him and his job field and our family and house and all those things. Just wanted to share that.
For sure. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to hear your grandparents okay and you're doing better. Pray for your taste and your smell.
I have a praise report also. I know a few weeks ago I shared pretty vulnerable that I just felt like I was really drowning in mom life, and that I wasn't really enjoying this season of virtual learning, and the feeling of overwhelm. And my husband's a heavy equipment operator. He has been for the past 10 years. He loves what he does, but even in this great state of California, when we have mild winters, their jobs shut down completely. And it's like up to like Caltrans and certain things like how the union operates. And so there's always some uncertainty as we, head into the winter months, especially with the holidays and wanting to do trips and things like that. But this year, instead of allowing anxiety to disrupt our life, like I just really just prayed and was so thankful, like, Jesus, like, thank you for covering me. And like, he fills in those places. Like, my husband is so helpful. And so he like gets up first thing in the morning and will like make the coffee and have the kitchen like sparkling clean, and the garage is in order, helps with the kids, like is so hands-on. It just takes some of that stress off of me, which then allows me to pour into my business even more intentionally, where we don't miss that income that he brings in, because after 6.5 years, like, it's just been incredible. And here we are in this launch, and I'm like, Jesus, the Lord just set this up perfectly this year, where I just see his hand and his favor in this situation where I was like struggling to like find joy. Like, after school was done, like I wanted a break. I wanted to be by myself. I didn't want to do the like, I felt drained. And now, like, instead of walking solo last night, like my daughter joined me. Right. And I don't find myself like hiding in the bathroom and locking the door and hoping that no one will come in. Like, just, I've been having more time where I'm not trying to like work at night. And my husband and I have been able to like watch movies because in the beginning of this business, like I sacrificed so much of like not watching movies and hustle, where I don't feel like we're in that season anymore. I'm grateful for what we have and what the Lord continues to provide. And just even those moments where we knew this was coming, but this year it's different. I don't have that anxiety of like the winter. I have gratefulness that he has this time home and that he can help me take care of those things that were like weighing me down. So it's cool how the Lord will just like work on your heart and reveal those things that were always there and just remind you, like, these are the things that you prayed for, and I have it covered. So.
Oh, that is so cool. Thank you for sharing that. I was actually wondering how everything was going. So.
I have a praise report as well. So I told you guys a couple weeks back that my sister-in-law had given her life to God, and then her house basically got like, she didn't get COVID, but she had like secondhand COVID, and then she had to go into quarantine. So she wasn't able to physically be going to church. And so I was like worried that since she was like so new that she would like fall away or something was going to happen. And I felt totally responsible for like, picking her up and like leading her in the right direction. And just yesterday, Sunday, sorry. Yes, Sunday. I got a text from her randomly, and she's like, "Hey, I just want to let you know that I watched the 8:30 a.m. service this morning, and if you want to talk about it, like, feel free to call me." And I was like, "What? Like, this is okay. This is crazy." I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm doing the 10:30 service, so I'll call you after I'm done." And I called her, and she was telling me how she's been watching the virtual like services and how it's really been speaking to her. And I was like, yes. So God is working there. So, and then prayer request, my daughters currently, they started about 2 days ago. They started with a cough. And I'm concerned. I don't think it's COVID, but I'm concerned because this time last year, my youngest daughter actually was in the hospital for bronchitis that turned into pneumonia. So I'm worried that that's something that's going to be a reoccurring theme this year because it sounds like a wet cough. So if you could keep her in your prayers.
What's your daughter's name?
Her name is Audrey. My oldest daughter, Kaylee, has a cough too, but she's pretty resilient. She normally doesn't have to go into the doctors or anything like that. But
Thank you. All right, does anybody else have anything? Okay. All right, well then I will close this in prayer here. Okay. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for this week. Thank you for showing us all these different things, the confirmations that we got, all these praise reports, Lord. This is just really beautiful. Thank you for hearing our prayers. Thank you for caring about all the small details that even though you are a God that has created all of these universes that we don't even know about, and has everything perfectly working in all of these ecosystems in our solar system and all these things that are so completely big and out of our control that we don't even understand. Thank you for caring about the small things in our life that we do understand, that we are a part of, Lord. Thank you for loving us so well. Thank you for showing us the things that you've shown us this week. Thank you for putting it on Priscilla's heart to write this study, to guide us through this so that we could learn more. And thank you for putting it on the early church's hearts to write the New Testament so that we have these words that you have said that we can learn from you even now, so long after you were on the earth, Lord. Thank you. I just want to lift up Jess. I thank you so much for protecting her grandparents. Thank you for protecting her, her husband, her children, her parents, Lord. Thank you for being in her household, Lord, and guiding her and Jimmy to this place where they're at. And thank you for strengthening their faith in that and allowing it to minister to other people around them that are watching and listening to them. And Lord, I just pray as they have stepped out in faith, I pray that you would continue guiding them, that you would provide the perfect job for Jimmy, that you would continue to bless Jess's business, and that you would continue to heal them, that there would be no long-term side effects from what they have gone through this past week. And I just pray that you would continue guiding them every step that they need to take and where they need to go, Lord. I just pray that they would very clearly hear your voice in leading them in that. I want to thank you so much for the praise report that Melissa gave, how she's feeling about her home life and how things feel with her husband's job and everything that you have provided, Lord. I know that the Bible leads us to gratitude for a reason, that when we choose to take a position of gratitude, that we recognize everything that you have given us and how faithful you have been to us in our life, Lord, and that increases our trust that you are who you say you are and that you care about us, that you love us, Lord. So thank you for doing that miracle in Melissa's heart, that she sees what's happening around her in such a different light, Lord. Thank you. And I thank you so much for Jessica's praise report as well, Lord. Thank you for lighting that fire in her sister-in-law and continuing to just help that flame burn brighter, Lord. As we pray for her faith to be strengthened, thank you that Jessica is in her life, Lord. I know that you have put them together for a reason. I just pray that you would continue guiding Jessica and that you would continue to strengthen her sister-in-law's faith as she is on this journey, Lord. I thank you for everything that has happened so far. And I just pray that you would continue guiding her. And I pray for her daughter, Audrey. I pray that you would protect her and help her body just be able to fight off this cough, Lord, and that there wouldn't be any severity in it, Lord, and that you would also protect her other daughter. And Lord, I pray for this week ahead. I pray that you would guide us, that you would lead us, that you would speak to us, Lord, that we would hear your voice and that we would act in faith based on what we believe about you, Lord. I just pray that you would continue to strengthen our faith in this time. And I lift all these things up to you, Lord, knowing that you do hear our prayers. Thank you. I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, I'll send out an email with those prayer requests for everybody. Thanks, guys, so much for being here. Oh, and I think you probably saw the email, but next week the call is going to be on Wednesday, unless my plans change. But for right now, it's going to be Wednesday morning. So see you all later. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good week.
Thank you. You too.